Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Okay, so this evening is the full moon observance, and in the Thai calendar it is Māgha Pūjā, and it's a commemoration of the time during the Buddha's life when there was a spontaneous gathering of 1,250 arhants, and when they so having 1,250 enlightened beings coming together in one place, it was a special occasion, but it wasn't. How do you say? It was spontaneous. It was just people showed up. It was the very early days of the Buddha's dispensation, and the Buddha gave a teaching, and the kind of the essence of it was what we recited after the last chant that we did, and that's it's a recollection of the fundamentals of the teaching, of the training, of the way of practice, and it's traditionally a time of recollecting the Sangha refuge, and of course the day of Visakha Puja, full moon in May, which is the Buddha's enlightenment day, plus his birth and passing away. That is a recollection of the Buddha. Full moon of July is the recollection of the first teaching, so it's a recollection of the Dhamma. And today is a recollection of Sangha, so the refuges, which are kind of the central piece of the Buddha's dispensation. When we recollect the Sangha, it's recollecting one is recollecting the people as that this is, I think that this is a human, the Buddha taught human beings, and Sangha are human beings who are following the path, and then say in its ideal form, Sangha is also those who have realized the fruits of the practice, and whether it's lay people or monastics, whether people living in the world or people who have taken on ordination training, that the Sangha is those who have realized the fruits of the practice, and because in the traditional chant, when we recollect Sangha, it's say the 4 pairs, the 8 kinds of beings, which is always a bit of a what the heck is this? 4 pairs, 8 kinds of beings, and that. But it's referring to those who have both realized the path and the fruit of stream entry, of once returner, non-returner, arhatship. So it's not referring to say just the ordained sangha, but all those who have realized the fruits of the practice, and of course it's pointing to what is it that is the characteristic of those who have who are sangha, who have realized the fruits of the practice, and that's supatipanno, one who practices well, uchupatipanno, practices directly, nyayapatipanno, practicing with the following this way of seeking an ending of suffering, and practicing with integrity. Yeah, so that is there's a recollection of Sangha, that these teachings that the Buddha gave are one. It's not just about the Buddha, who was the enlightened teacher, but or the teachings themselves, but that this teaching and what the Buddha was pointing to is for something for human beings to realize and to partake in, participate in the fruits of the practice. So that it's a this sense of recollecting that there have been, say, from the time of the Buddha over 2,600 years now, those who have realized the fruits of the practice, and that the fruits of that practice is available to us if we wish, and so on one level, that sense of sangha is those who are practicing and who are inspired by it, and it's an act of devotion to try to figure out, well, what is a way of practice that's going to, a way of living that's going to bear fruit in terms of happiness, well-being, freedom from suffering, and to have that sense of encouragement and confidence that there are it's possible, and this is something that the Buddha said on his the time of his passing away, that as long as people are willing to practice the Eightfold Path of starting from right view through to right concentration, this path of virtue, of meditation, of wisdom, there will be people who will realize the fruits of that path. So it's for us to put forth the effort and take the interest in trying to fulfill that. When on the actual occasion of the Māgha Pūjā, then just the Buddha pointing to the the fundamentals of that of what not doing any evil, sabba papa sakarnam, that's not doing any evil, to be committed to the good, kusala, kusala supasampada, sort of bringing goodness to fulfillment or to fruition, and then sajita pralayotapanam, to purify the mind, and so that say that not doing of what is what's unskillful, what is harmful, refraining from, and it's interesting, like when the like the taking of the precepts is I undertake to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. So it's like a not doing of something, and that is really skillful, and it's like a laying a foundation, because it's basically all of us as human beings, we have all this mixture of different things, trying to do that which is good, and we end up doing things which are not so good. But there's a certain clarity that we can bring to, okay, at least I can refrain from certain things that are unskillful. And then as one does that opens the doorways, opens the pathways into really fulfilling what is skillful, because it's not confusing things, confusing the mind, confusing our life too much with things that are really detrimental to our well-being and our happiness, and the well-being and happiness of other people. And it was, I remember Ajahn Chah making a comment one time, and said that he said, so many people come to the monastery to come from all over all around the country. People have been coming for years to his monastery, and everybody's looking to make merit, to do good action, to do good, and to accumulate blessings of goodness. There's this meritorious action. And he said, but I've never heard anybody come to the monastery and say that they've come to refrain from evil, refrain from doing what's unskillful. Everybody wants the good, but then to actually put brakes on the unskillfulness, and so that it's that's an aspect of our life that we tend to we all want happiness and well-being, and to be blessed by by certain things, but then to actually just step back from some of the things that we really know aren't that good for us or good for anybody, but to really to rein that in. We want to keep our options open. That's it. And that's very human. It's not just American. So the Americans love their options, but so do all human beings. And so that stepping back from the unskillful, and being willing to make that conscious. And it's interesting. So when the Buddha is giving this teaching, I mean, this is a teaching to to fully enlightened beings, and you wonder, do they really need these fundamentals? And I think to actually articulate it and delight in the clarity and simplicity of the Buddha's teaching, even for somebody who is fully awakened, just being reminded of how direct and how clear this path is, how direct and how clear these teachings are, because it's a very human tendency to proliferate and extrapolate and assume things, and it's just that reminder of how this path is. It's not that difficult when you bring it down to the fundamentals, to the basics, and then you say, oh, and it's sort of, and the heart goes, right. It just sings with that sense of delight, and to be encouraging ourselves and others, and to keep that clarity, so that purifying the heart, that sense of, because there's a steeping oneself in goodness, but then what's it mean to purify the heart? And this is where one is that purification really comes from a relinquishing of views, of opinions, relinquishing of those deep-seated self-position and self-positioning that is, it's very much a part of the human condition. But in order to transcend the human condition, one that sense of views, of opinions, of taking a stance, of comparing, of competing, of propping up a sense of self, it's so utterly frustrating and conducive to suffering. And that purification is that relinquishing of letting go, and that willingness to release and relinquish these habitual tendencies, deep-seated tendencies, and the Buddha said, these are the teachings of all Buddhas, and because the Buddha didn't say it's just me, I'm the only Buddha. He said there's always been in the because the Buddha doesn't even point to himself, this particular world system as being the one and only thing in time and place. Said, there's just this coming into being and passing away of world systems. This has been going on forever. And within that, there's always awakened beings who come to teach and point the way. And this is what a Buddha traditionally is. And this has been going on for eons and eons and eons, and will continue to. There will always be beings who seek truth, and I think that's the nature of being conscious beings, having a conscious existence. That we seek something that's what is grounded in truth, what's actually true, what's really beneficial, where is a place of real refuge, and that's a eternal question. So that, and all of the Buddhas point to the way to find that. Then the Buddha points to the say fundamentals of say a practice of living skillfully, and they say patient endurance. Kandi paramang tapodidika. Patient endurance is the highest practice. Burning up of defilement, burning out defilements. This is that being willing to be patient, because it's who doesn't want to we want instant gratification, we want quick enlightenment, we want to get there. How do we make this, what's the easy and quick way to liberation? And who doesn't want that? But the ability to be patient, to have an enduring mind that doesn't just cave into our moods and our biases or our preferences, but is willing to be present with. And this is, the sense of patience to me is much more, how is the ability to be present with an experience, as opposed to just, say being patient is usually how we conceive of it, as just grudgingly putting up with something till it's over. It's not really a bright quality of mind or a liberating quality of mind, but to be present and with what we're experiencing without getting caught up in the liking or disliking of it, or being overwhelmed by either the pleasure or the pain of a particular situation. So that being, having this enduring quality of mind, a steady quality of mind, that's what really burns up the habitual patterns of our say mind stream. So that's something that the Buddha points to, friend. It's teaching of. This is also teaching of all the Buddhas. Certainly the how so often Ajahn Chah would be the emphasis of his learning how to have this quality of patient endurance. Sometimes it's the seeing of things over and over again, being willing to look at it, willing to learn from it, willing to understand it, willing to see it in a different light, rather than just our, say, habitual pattern, habitual, say, assumption. We be patient with it, so we're willing to look at it in a different light, and then that's where the hook kind of releases, or we're willing to release it. And they say the Buddha say Nibbana is supreme. Is how the ending, and Nibbana is almost invariably described and defined as either the ending of suffering or the ending of of defilement, of the qualities that stain the heart. And so rather than defining it as some extraordinarily pleasurable state, which it is, but the Buddha is pointing to something that's a bit more easy to quote, because the nature of desire is such that however pleasant something is, you can always conceive of something more pleasant. Or however beautiful something is, one can always conceive of something more beautiful. So then but the sense of suffering, how do we end that sense of dissatisfaction, discontent, that we can see coming to an end, and that we can engage in terms of how do we relinquish and let go and establish ourselves in knowledge and clarity so that there isn't discontent, dissatisfaction, a dis-ease. And there's a kind of an ending of that agitation of mind, that movement of mind that's looking for something else, and that I need something else in order to be happy. I need something else in order to be content and peaceful. And so but then when that movement and that propensity to seek that out really comes to an end through wisdom, then there's that is what the Buddha points to as Nibbana. And say, not a renunciant is one who injures others. And so that sense of, again, come back emphasizing that sense of not harming. And so whoever troubles others can be called a monk. So these apply to any practitioner. So not injuring, not harming, not troubling, not creating problems in the sense of taking advantage of, or exploiting, or harming in whatever way, and that is and same, not to insult, not to injure. The other one is living. There's a restraint that one pulls back from those habits and tendencies and engagement that is creating. Is of a problematic nature, and so it has a one. It's a gauge for the recognizing in somebody else, but it's also for oneself to be reflecting and saying, okay, that wasn't so skillful. I'll have to step back from that. And then knowing one's measure at the meal, the matanyuta, is the sense of what, because it's one. Of course, one extrapolates. The Buddha is using this particularly. This is a teaching to monastics and and so that in terms of the opportunity for any kind of gratification, sensual gratification, the big thing's the meal, and so that knowing the appropriate amount in what one consumes. So then that can be easily extended to all things. That sense of just knowing what's appropriate for our own, to learning how to live simply, to have simple needs, to not require a whole lot of material things, or the need to consume, or to have a whole lot of possessions, a whole lot of things that one is gaining. So there's a simplicity, and that is, one, it gives oneself a tremendous amount of freedom, but it's also learning how to live lightly, on the planet, and that's especially in the Buddha's teaching that 2,600 years ago, and it certainly is resonates even more in modern times, where the ideal and the model for what's going to make everybody happy is consumption, and having more, having the newest, having the latest, having the best, and we live in a throwaway culture. It's you consume and then you just you throw it away, and and where's away anyway? We throw away things. Everything's consumed and we throw it away, but where's away? It's just back in. It's back into the earth, into the water, into the air, and it comes back to haunt us as pollution, and it's harming ourselves. So that a simplicity of knowing how to live without consuming huge amounts. So like I can remember one time, I was still layman, traveling in India. I was living I rented a house up in the hills, Himachal Pradesh, and I remember we had a bunch of trash, and asked one of the villagers where the trash bin place, and they had a village. They had in the village had it was up in the hills, and the village had a place for trash, and we took our things there, and I was looking at it, and of course there was some dead animal there. There was all sorts of stuff, but it was just the accumulation of actual trash. The village had probably been there for hundreds of years, and but it was only fairly recently that they were starting to get trash that was piling up. That was, mostly tin, or there wasn't even in those days. It wasn't even there was plastic, but so that was starting to accumulate. Before, everything was reused in some way, shape, or form, or it wasn't, wasn't made from resources that were just thrown away. Everything was reused in some way, or it was made from something that broke down. Like in the old days, in Thailand, nowadays just the amount of the plastic bags is just so ubiquitous. But in the old days, things were put together in banana leaf packaging, and you could easily throw it away because it'd just break down and go back to the earth in a good way. But that's not the case with the convenience of, say, modern materials. But you throw them away, and then you say, well, where is away? it comes back to haunt us and doesn't really go away. And so it's learning how to live in the sense of simplicity and knowing the proper measure in what one uses and how one lives and what one consumes. Sense of retreating to a lonely place, just seeking some kind of quiet, some kind of peace, some place where one is not constantly engaging or being engaged with, where one can learn how to listen to oneself, listen to listen to the stories that the mind is telling, listening to the heart. What's the heart saying? And it doesn't mean one has to isolate oneself from the world, but what it means is to be able to step back so one can understand more clearly how can I be content with just myself, where I'm not filling the mind up with all sorts of distractions, where I can actually enjoy a sense of solitude or a sense of quiet, a sense of spaciousness and peace. And that doesn't mean one needs to have to it's helpful coming to a forest monastery. It's quite peaceful and spacious. But also, what happens when one goes home? That's actually a quiet place. If nobody else is there, it's quiet. But what do we do when we go home? Sort of, pick up your iPad, go on to Facebook, see how many messages you got, see who's doing what. Go on to YouTube and do something. You've got a whole sort of raft of movies you haven't watched yet. So just go to Netflix and just keeping the mind busy or because nobody turns on the television anymore. It's those. But there's you have to put on some music at least to listen to. And if you don't do that, then you've got or at the same time, you're watching something, listening to something, and then going to the fridge and looking for something to eat. You just got to do something. You just can't sit there quiet and peaceful. So that learning how to step back, like refraining from that impulse to have to engage, that compulsion to have to do something, have to be something, have to consume, have to get, have to engage somehow. How do we become peaceful? How do we experience a kind of spacious quality of clarity and peace? Well, we have to practice. And it just doesn't happen because it seems like a nice idea. It's just that training with it in little bits, little increments every day. And that's that devotion to the higher mind. That devotion to training the heart. Learning how to to challenge oneself. Sometimes just again you say, well, everybody wants to be peaceful, but that's a challenge to actually to do it and to sustain it. So it's just that will, that devotion to training and taking on a perspective that helps one to cultivate qualities that are really conducive to well-being and clarity. So that this teaching that the Buddha gives is not, again, a sense of, the teaching is to 1,250 arahants, but it's a reviewing of that kind of directness and clarity and simplicity of this path, and it's for those who've really realized it's something to really rejoice in, and for those who have not, then it's something to remind oneself, encourage oneself. This is a teaching for human beings. And this Sangha of the Buddha's disciples who are willing to practice. In Thailand, in Ajahn Chah's monastery, before he became ill, then the big gathering would be at Māgha Pūjā, this day of celebration of Sangha, of community. And the branch monasteries would come. In those days there weren't a huge number of branch monasteries. Say when I was there, when I first arrived, probably about 14, 15 branch monasteries, and slowly increased. Like Wat Nanachat became branch monastery number 20 or something. But the people would come, and lay community would gather, and the circumambulation was many hundreds of people, and just going through the forest, and in a very quiet procession, candles, incense, flowers, and I found it incredibly inspiring. And just say this, just having this people coming together to do something peaceful and to nurture their faith in the teachings and the path, and to delight in being together. And that's something that made a huge impression for me, and in that sense of because sometimes when we think of Buddhism, and especially from a Western perspective of where the individual is so exalted, and the kind of the sense of the independent individual who sort of strives, but if from the Buddhist perspective, what he one of the things he said over and over again are just the importance of having good spiritual friendships, and how that sense of cultivating and drawing close to good spiritual friends is the one of the essential pieces of the realization of Dhamma, and so that the structure or the refuge of Sangha is they say the fourfold Sangha of the lay community and the monastic community coming together to practice and to encourage each other in this path, and so that having a day in the year where you really make that conscious and reflect on it and doing it in a that's say again. So sometimes in Buddhism, some of you don't have a elaborate ritual or ceremony, but it's quite meaningful to. It's like having physical things of objects of or means of devotion. Candles, incense, flowers is very simple, but these are traditional symbols of respect and devotion, and then to be doing a quiet circumambulation around the shrine within a religious site, and then bringing to mind these refuges of Buddha, of Dhamma and Sangha, and it's very simple, but it can be very meaningful and very powerful for uplifting the heart. Because in the end, we think of the consume. We tend to try to consume things out there to gain some kind of well-being, but that sense of what do we rely? So relying on faith, on devotion, on effort, on reflection and investigation, on wisdom, on mindfulness. How do we implement mindfulness in just a simple act without our minds going all over the place and getting distracted? And these sometimes simple ceremonies are things that help to point out, let's just bring it back to the basics. And of course this whole teaching of the Ovada Patimokkha is bring it back to the basics, bring it back to the essentials. That'll take you to the goal. So I'll offer that for reflection this evening.